Welcome to this lecture about crop adaptation to climate change. Adaptation of crop production to climate change aims to make it more risk-proof. And as you've seen in the course 1.3, the lecture about climate impacts on agriculture, climate change will have profound impacts on crop production. To make agriculture future-proof under a more volatile climate, the practices of farming need to be adapted, so that means that they become less affected by risks. This adaptation does concern crop growth, but also the raising of animals, the availability of labor, the quality and safety of food, and all steps along the food processing chain. Importantly, we do by far not know all the challenges that lay ahead of us, so adaptation to a largely unknown future is inherently a bet, particularly for the next season. Of course, there's already a lot of knowledge about climate change, the challenges posed by climate change, and also how to adapt to it. However, there are major parts that are still unknown. So the question is, what can we do about the unknown parts, about the parts where knowledge is still missing? And yeah, there are different options. We can just accept and hope, or another option is to do more research about it, to get more knowledge, to know more about climate change challenges, and also how to adapt. What's for sure is that adaptation needs to take place all along the food security chain, and this food security chain should be familiar to you because you've already seen it in the lecture about climate change impacts on agriculture. So you can see the chain has different elements. For example, the food should be physically available, but also economically accessible, and the food should have a sufficient nutrition status. So here you can see how the different elements need to be adapted. Regarding the physically availability, for example, plants and animals along with the management should be adapted, and it could also be considered to change the labor supply. The focus of this lecture is on the physical availability of food. Moreover, it should be ensured that the markets are accessible, and also there should be device measures to stabilize prices. Moreover, storage should be more climate friendly and climate proof. And it should be ensured that there is an equal access to food. Also, the improvement of the sanitary situation is necessary, and regarding the nutrition status of food, breeding for higher nutrient content could be considered. But there's also the question if to aim for stability rather than for high yields. Okay, so let's have a look how the physical availability of food can be secured, so in fact how crop production can be adapted to climate change. The following two slides show you a course overview of risks from climate change and also the associated adaptation measures. Please note that this is only a superficial overview, as risks and adaptation options are complex and need to be inspected in detail to match the region or also the cropping system. So here you can see various adaptation measures like, for example, earlier sowing, the buildup of humus, agroforestry or irrigation. And associated, you can see the risks that those measures are targeting. So take your time, read through the measures and also have a look what risks they are targeting. And here even more measures how crop production can be adapted to climate change. So for example, on this slide you can see agri-photovoltaic, permaculture or diversification. So once again, please take your time, pause the video here, read through the measures and also look at the associated risks. So now we've seen quite a lot of adaptation measures, but I would also like to highlight that they are not only adaptation measures to climate change, but also mitigation measures of climate change. And in agriculture, those two might go hand in hand. Of course, it is difficult to provide specific recommendations here, as a measure needs to be adapted to location and farming system. Nonetheless, a few guidelines for both adapting to and simultaneously mitigating climate change can be derived. So there are several so-called no-regret measures with little or no negative effects, and they are likely useful even without climate change. And such measures can, for example, reduce the harvest loss, enhance the energy efficiency, minimize erosion, or diversify the farm to many crops and also many diverse income sources. However, yet no single measure should be considered as a silver bullet, as negative side effects may occur. Focusing on climate protection or adaptation only may be counterproductive, as agriculture is a complex system. Thus, those measures that fulfill multiple targets, for example adaptation, mitigation, erosion prevention or biodiversity, should be preferred. Particularly bioenergy is not a large-scale solution due to its immense land footprint and should be restricted to the use of waste, plant residues, animal manure or wood. Please always remember that not only adaptation to or mitigation of climate change is important, but both are necessary. And in the best case, they should be symbiotic. Okay, so let's wrap this up. Adaptation of crop production to climate change will be necessary to ensure a sufficient supply of food in the future. As you've seen, there are many possible measures for adapting crops to different climatic risks. Several of these can serve both as adaptation measures and also as mitigation measures of climate change. But none of them is a panacea and should thus be embedded in a more climate-friendly and more climate-resilient system. As you've seen, there are no regret options for agriculture with low side effects but large benefits. However, yet the future is hard to foresee, and thus many unknowns will remain that could threaten even agriculture that is well adapted to the known risks.